Hey folks, Mr. Finley here. This is a super short video just going over some of the main authors and plays of the different styles that we've been looking at in class. This is also we've gone over in class, but I wanted to make sure there was a video to go over it. So the first style of the 20th century starts in 1892 with Henrik Ibsen inventing realism by combining the naturalism, realistic sets, realistic acting with classical Greek structure. And the first play that uses this is the play The Doll's House, of course. At the same time as he was inventing realism, his arch nemesis, August Strindberg, invented something he called symbolism. He said, no, you can't project reality on stage, so don't even try. Go in the other direction. We should have dream images on stage. And he called that symbolism. He wanted the plays to be about symbols and be more dreamlike. And Strindberg actually wrote several plays like this, but the most obvious of them is a play called The Dream Play. And it's very dreamlike, very symbolic. And that's what Strindberg said. Instead of trying to be realistic, we should go as far as we can in the other direction. And that sort of led to all the different sorts of isms we see in the 20th century, as we discussed in class. Symbolism, that was Strindberg's idea, sort of evolved into what we call surrealism. So both symbolism and surrealism are dreamlike, like the dream play. A specific branch of surrealism is something called theater of cruelty. This was something developed by Anton Artaud, a very French guy. And his most famous play is The Spurt of Blood. We'll look at that in class. But theater of cruelty was a sort of surrealism that was literally meant to attack the audience, like shake them out of their understanding of the world. It's very, very surreal, very bizarre. It wasn't necessarily like violent or anything. That's not what we mean by cruelty. By cruelty, he meant really putting the audience in the center of this vortex of images to try and shake them out of their beliefs. After surrealism, there are different types of isms that develop. One of them is expressionism. Expressionism comes from Germany in the First World War and suggests that there is no reality. There's only the world as we ourselves experience it. So expressionism is where the world on stage is seen through the eyes of a given character and twisted to fit that character. It's often surreal because the expressionist suggested that if you were to see the world through someone else's eyes, it would seem surreal to you. The most famous example of this on stage is an American named Elmer Rice, like the thing that you eat, Elmer Rice, and a play called The Adding Machine, in which we see a person who's so sort of weighed down by modern life and the banality of his job that the world to him is nothing more than this gigantic adding machine. And he ends up he tries all these things to sort of overcome his mundane life, and he ends up having an affair and then killing someone and then going to heaven and then going to hell and ends right back on the same adding machine again. It's a statement about the inescapable boringness, basically, of modern life seen through this expressionistic lens. So that's The Adding Machine by Elmer Rice. You also have absurdism, of course. This was put forward by a guy named Samuel Beckett, who suggested that the world is pointless. There's nothing we can do about anything. There's nothing to be done. That was one of his lines. That the harder we try to get anything done, the less good will come of it. So everything is pointless. The only thing we can do is laugh at how absurd it is that we're trying to do something when life is so pointless. And so that's absurdism, right? We talked about that in class. And the most famous play of this, of course, is Waiting for Godot, which is a play about two guys waiting for this guy named Godot to show up, who will solve all their problems. They spend the whole first act waiting. Various things happen. At the end of the first act, Godot does not show up, but a boy says he promises he'll be here tomorrow. Second act, same exact thing. They spend the whole act waiting. They realize Godot's never going to show up. They try to kill themselves, and they can't even do that. Same boy shows up, says, Godot promises he'll be here tomorrow. And it's a very sort of sad play because nothing gets done, and they're heartbroken. And it's a very funny play because we laugh at these ridiculous characters, hoping that something might happen, and we know in the audience that nothing ever will. And that's what Beckett believed about the world, so that's Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, which is absurdism. The final ism we'll look at is theatricalism, which is looking at a play without trying to hide that it's a play, where we actually point up that you're in a theater watching a play. That's why it's called theatricalism. It's We're reminding you at every step that this is just a play. This was invented by Bertolt Brecht with a play called The Caucasian Chalk Circle. He wrote several other plays. That was the first one that was sort of this theatricalism. And Brecht wanted people not to get carried away by the emotions in a play, but instead to think about the ideas. He was a big Marxist. He wanted there to be social revolution, and he thought the theater can do this. If people stop going to the theater and having emotions, he wanted you to go to the theater and see the characters and think about their plight, and for him, realize how it was capitalism making them sad, and go out and have a revolution. So he wanted, through theatricalism, people to stop being emotionally involved and more intellectually involved in the plays. It backfired, actually, because even if we're reminding the audience that they were just watching a play, we get emotionally involved anyway. And it's really quite wonderful, because if you sort of aim for the head, you get the head and the heart thrown in. So that's theatricalism. And that's Bertolt Brecht invented that, and the first example of it is the Caucasian Chalk Circle. So, of course, these are all things we've talked about or will talk about in class, but I wanted it to be a video that sort of puts it all together. Thanks.